good morning, family. This is Tiffany Ginyard, former editor of the Afro American Newspapers and current CEO of the Fly Girl Network. Check out my interview with Pascal Archimede on Nofi, first on Black Culture.
Good morning, Tiffany Ginyard.
Good morning, Pascal.
It's a real pleasure to have you with us today. You were born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland in the US. You're the former managing editor of the Afro American Newpaper, commonly known as the Afro, which is a weekly Black-owned newspaper that was established back in 1892. You're now the CEO of the Fly Girl Network, a media and outreach program that serves young people. Of course, we'll be talking about it soon, but first of all, I would like to talk about Baltimore because 63% of the population of Baltimore is Black. Why is this city predominantly Black?
I guess the first thing that comes to mind is the Mason-Dixon line. Maryland, if we can zoom out a little bit, Maryland is the last state that is below the Mason-Dixon line. Mm-hmm. And historically, the Mason-Dixon line is the line that divided the Confederacy from the Union, right? The free states, free slave states versus the slave states.
Mainly white for most of its history, Baltimore, according to what I read, Baltimore transitioned to having a Black majority in the 1970s. So what happened back then?
Once segregation happened and we all started to integrate, people started to migrate to Baltimore because now there are opportunities there from those rural areas. Basically, what happened was they redlined the city to allow us to come. And redlining is basically this concept of segregated real estate, to make it really simple. And so on the books, we have an exhibition down at the Impact Hub in Baltimore that highlights the concept of redlining that has been duplicated in major cities across the nation. It's like the affirmative action of real estate. And so what happened was with the redlining, now that these Black folk can come in and buy a property wherever they wanted to, what they did was we had an exodus of white folk leaving for the counties in Columbia because, they didn't want to live with us. And we preserved, if you look at the city, it's so divided, you can see it. They preserved certain areas where they built the projects, and those were the Black areas. And the way that they did it is they made certain areas like Bolton Hill and Middle East Baltimore. They made those areas, and I'm thinking right here, Old Emerson, where I live on the outskirts of the city line. They made those areas more expensive. And basically when they had different clauses on leases and on, paperwork saying that your property value is going to go down once these people come. Here are opportunities out here.
All right.
And that's like the nutshell of it. Like, the project has, so much extensiveness, and I'm gonna share some links with you that you can share with your audience, because the redlining, I don't want to say project, but it was a project. It really segregated our communities.
Just to get back to the 1970s, what I read is that many large industrial and commercial businesses in the 1970s started moving their operations out of the city and sometimes out of the region. And then Baltimore's population dropped. And between 1970 and 1980, the city lost like more than 100,000 residents as thousands of white people from Baltimore moved out to the surrounding suburbs. So right now, do you have the feeling that you've got more Black people inside Baltimore and that outside in the suburbs is full of white people?
Not right now. No.
Okay.
There is, now there is now they're coming back.
Okay. What you mean? White people are coming back to the.
White people are coming back to the
Okay.
city, and Black folk are out in the suburbs.
How do you explain this trend?
From lived experience, this is the exodus of Black people is linked to this chain of public housing.
Okay.
Because because the living conditions for Black people are so, dire. I don't want to use that word, but just, they're the lack of opportunity here. The government is offering people who are on Section 8, people who are getting, public assistance, especially public housing assistance. The only way that you can live a better life is to leave the city.
Out of 150 cities, a recent Wallet Hub study ranks Baltimore 144th for highest violent crime rate. Is it real? Is it true? Or is it, how do you feel? How does it sound to you?
I'm numb to those statistics because they're true. I don't know about the most of because I can't say that. I don't live in other cities. I only live in Baltimore. Okay. So I can't even say that is true. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, I can't say that's true. Does it feel true? I can't even say that because I've never lived in all them other cities. So I'm going to go ahead and hold my city down by saying that. Them numbers really don't matter nothing to me. Do they feel, does that feel real? Yes. Is the violence like intolerable? Absolutely. But I'm not going to go putting numbers on them. So that's what I mean by I'm numb to that. Yeah, it's lots of violence, it's lots of drugs, it's lots of broken families, it's lots of dilapidated housing, it's lots of neglect, it's lots of corruption.
Baltimore is also known because it has a deeply rooted African American heritage, being home to the largest population of free Black people half a century before the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. And this is something that you barely find in history books. Like, half a century before the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, Baltimore was home to a free Black community. Were you aware of that?
Yes. I actually visited, and I just became aware of that because there's so many hidden gems. That's what I mean. There's so many hidden gems. You got the negative side, but it's so much to counteract the positive side, but you really have to go and look. You have to really put your feet on the ground in this city. I went down into the inner harbor. One day I go by this water all the time, but I never seen this placard that we have these different historical landmark trails throughout the city just pop up, and all I see is just this tall soldier, and he's Black. I've read all of the information, but I couldn't read. I couldn't. It's somewhere in my subconscious, but all I can say was, oh my God. Like, I come from, even as a Baltimore native, that stuff that they saying that our kids are absorbing on the news about who we are is so far from the truth. And just being in that community where Black people can't even afford to live, can barely afford to park their cars because it costs so much just to go by the water. I rode a scooter down there because it's just ridiculously high just to park my car to enjoy a public place.
And you know what, Tiffany? I'm coming back to more contemporary history. Now, back in 2015, Baltimore experienced riots that lasted a whole month. What happened and how did it end up? What happened to Freddie Carlos Gray Jr.?
À l'origine de ces violences, les funérailles de Freddie Gray, un jeune noir de 25 ans mort dans des circonstances suspectes après son arrestation par la police locale le 19 avril dernier.
Oh, he got killed.
But how?
By the
What
police.
happened? Okay, all right.
He got killed by the police. And that's all I remember.
Okay.
He got killed by the police and people were angry. And for the first time, we saw what we already knew, what we call the knockers do in the streets. And that's roll up on people. And they could be guilty. I ain't knocking. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying Freddie Gray was or wasn't. But in my lived experience, I know police to run up on people and from unmarked cars and unmarked clothes. They the narcotics division. And these weren't necessarily those police, but they run up on people and frisk you, throw you to the ground, fight you, rob you. I know that to be true.
Okay, because just to remind that Freddie Carlos Gray Jr. was a 25-year-old African American, and he was arrested by the Baltimore Police Department over possessing a knife. And so he died a few days later, and his death was ascribed to injuries to his spinal cord. And what happened to Freddie Carlos Gray Jr. reminds me of what happened in 2020 to Claude Jean-Pierre, who was a 67-year-old retiree from my country, Guadeloupe. He got pulled over by traffic control and hospitalized following this roadside check. He died a few days later due to injuries to his spinal cord. And believe it or not, as we speak now, the two policemen who carried out the road check have not been arrested and are still on duty today. That's the reality.
Yeah. I went to school with one of the officers that was on trial. I recognized her from middle school.
All right.
And no judgment. I didn't follow the case because again, I didn't want the details because we lived this. I didn't want the details. I didn't want to be tainted. So like my story is always going to be from them babies' perspective and seeing it from their eyes. And that's how I survive in the city, is surrounding myself in service. So all of I only have language for solutions. I don't have a language for the chaos. And the challenges.
So speaking about solutions, in 2010, you set up the Fly Girl Network. What is this organization and why did you feel the need to create it?
I started off at the Afro American Newpaper before I started teaching. So I did 2 tours at the Afro. So when you met me, that was my second tour.
Okay.
My first tour, I left the Afro because there was a calling in me to get behind the story. So I was managing editor, I was bureau chief when I left in 2010. And I was having a daughter at the time, and I had become part of the stories that I started to pursue. I was a single mother. I was one of the things that I was on the right side of the red line. That's the only thing that separates me from, and it doesn't even separate me, but that's only the one thing that has given me more opportunity than most, is just because of where I lived. And so I had a daughter at the time, and I was strapped for, telling the stories and telling the truth, it don't pay. And now I had somebody to think about. And I had to figure out how I was going to create a world for her in this city. And I wanted to get behind the stories because I'm tired of writing about it. I'm tired of rehearsing all these statistics, and I'm just writing about it. And I know it makes an impact to people reading, but I wanted to be a part of it because I got to live here. So I decided to teach. And teaching offered me an opportunity to not only support myself financially and be able to support a family, but it also allowed me to serve in my community in a way that I would be able to address some of the challenges that I often wrote about. But most of those young people were the children of my peers who were teenage parents at like 16 and 17 years old, right? This generation, we real close to our children in age. And so when I saw that, I also saw the story begin to unfold like, oh, wow, these are the children of the children who had to raise themselves. Now, the 80s, when crack hit, we can talk about that. When crack hit and devastated that predominantly Black community and shattered it, these children that I was teaching were the grandchildren of all of those people who died of AIDS, who, got lost in addiction, who lost all of those houses that are now dilapidated, and those kids, their children, my peers who I went to school with, had to raise themselves. So I got a group of kids now in the classroom that's carrying all that generational trauma, and they trying to read for Miss Ginyard. I can see all of their potential. I can see it in their eyes. They just waiting for somebody to pull it out of them because they don't even know how to navigate themselves. They got so much stuff on them. And being the intuitive person that I am, that's what I immediately gravitated to. And so I had this curriculum to follow. And that is not designed for young people to really, to grow in themselves. It's not designed to teach. That's a whole nother story. It ain't designed for us. And it's not designed for us to succeed. So when I get to not being, finding this wall in the classroom where they're not performing, they're not reading, it's because they got these emotional blocks. So one day I take the kids out on a field trip. It's like my first month of teaching, brand new teacher, spick and span in the classroom. I take a group of kids with my own money, my own resources from the Afro, as a matter of fact, and my own money, because field trips and all that, that's a luxury. Beginning of the year, definitely a luxury. But I was a new teacher and I wanted to set the tone, and I really wanted to get to know these kids and take them out the environment. I already knew that going in the classroom. And I took them to center stage and we went to a play. And I got free tickets from the Afro or something like that. I knew somebody, I agreed to write about it so that I could take these kids. On the way home on the bus, one of the young ladies, she said, you know what, Miss Ginyard, we just really need a place where we can just dump. It's just so much going on. We just need a place to dump, like, because they losing friends every day. People getting shot like every day. People dying on their steps, on the way home from school. Like this is life. And so they need a place to dump because they really want to pursue school. They trying to get out of here. They want to, go to college.
They want to escalate. They want to.
Yeah. And so they like, well, you need to set something up for us because we got to dump this. So what I ended up doing was I took her advice because I knew that I wasn't going to be successful in the classroom. They told me. And I just thought, and I just followed it. When they say when God is at work, you follow God at work. You don't necessarily have to come with your own agenda. If you come with an open spirit and an open vessel, your agenda will appear. Right. And those kids began my teaching. They taught me how to serve a community that, like you said, wants to elevate, but don't have the resources, and not just physical resources, but the parental structure, the family structure. Had lots of kids in my classroom that's coming trying to get that knowledge because they in foster care. So I created on Thursday evenings, because most of this was the young ladies, because they were always fighting.
Okay.
The boys had sports, football, and boys don't, they carry their trauma differently. So their outlets were different. And I'm not saying that they weren't suffering, but the young ladies, they couldn't function because they were fighting. They couldn't even, they were so angry. And so I sat them down and we created a space where we could start to unpack what's going on out in them hallways when you punching somebody just because she looked at you wrong or posted something on social media that you didn't like, and then you bringing it to the classroom and creating an even wider gap between you and your ticket up out of here with an education. We need to talk about that. And we started to do that every Thursday. And I recruited my girlfriends who, like me, came from Baltimore City Public Schools and took the nuggets and the gems that we did get and closed the gaps that we didn't get, and, you know, pulled ourselves up by the bootstraps. We were the talented 10th and the bootstrappers all at the same time. And we brought that together and poured into these young people in my classroom every Thursday for 5 years. Okay, so in fact, so if I understand well, at the beginning, the Fly Girl Network was a space for young girls to talk and express their frustration. Yep, and for them to explore. And once we got there, then it was to explore who they really were. So it was like taking that crab, that's all that crab behind me, and transforming it into a butterfly. Okay, all right. Yeah. Got you. And so what about the Fly Girl Network today in 2022? What is it? It has transformed to include a media component to reach young people. So now I'm providing media to young people, creating these platforms, taking that circle of young people that I used to do at Emerson Westside High School and now making it available through the channels that I now can get to them through YouTube, through Instagram, and through Facebook. So that now the idea of the Fly Girl Network is our caveat, our mission has expanded to not just providing that outreach, that caveat, but now we are a outreach program, and our mission is to develop and curate conscious raising media. Okay, what do you mean? So we want to raise the consciousness of Black women and girls to realize who they truly are. When you understand who you truly are, you already realize you're the master of your own fate then, once you realize who you are. But you can't get in that master mode until you really break off all of that stuff. Break off the Baltimore, right? It is a part of you, but it's not you. Right? Break that off. Break the generational trauma off. Let's get aware of all of these pieces of you that make you who you are, that beautiful person. But like, let's now dig deep and who are you really? Beyond, take all that off. And we realize we all the same. We all got these same powers to fulfill all of our dreams. So Tiffany, through your Fly Girl Network, so I understood that you using the social networks like Facebook or Instagram, but what kind of programs do you offer? Can you give me more details about the type of programs? Right. So the mission is to develop conscious raising media, also to offer resilience training, and to curate transformational experiences. So that brings me back to the media, which is raising the awareness. These are the principles of the Fly Girl Network. The media raises the awareness. It draws the people in. Then you come in and we got resilience training. It's not a program, it's a training, it's an experience, because resiliency is something, it's a skill that you're going to have to develop, cultivate, and sustain. So over the course of time, I've developed a resiliency curriculum that I'm now unfolding through in these small groups, these small pockets of young people that are interested in the media that I'm putting out. So when they see the media and they dropping the dot, that's how I get them. Oh, I got this resiliency training program that'll help you with this thing that you just commented on, right? And the resiliency program, I'm a certified heart math technician where I teach young people how to balance the art of coherence and how to balance their heart and minds and track their heart variation rhythms. So there's the body. And then I'm a Reiki practitioner. I'm certified in Kundalini Reiki 1 and 2. So, and I'm an energy worker. So I also teach people how to regulate their energy, and we learn all about the science of self-awareness.